996, 997, 998, 999, 1,000. Oh, hey guys, how you doing? I didn't realize I was on. I guess I'll have to do the other arm a little bit later. All right, so we're ready for another divisional review. This time I'm going to take a look at the beloved Webster Division. Beloved by those who are in it and probably nobody else, maybe their mothers. That's about as far as I think we can go with that. We've got 4 teams in that division, just like we have in our other divisions. We have the Heels, we've got Phrases Crazies, we have Juice, and of course we have Swagger. Excuse me, I must have an emergency call here. Just somebody complaining about my review for the other divisions. Forget it. All right, so let's get on point here. I've got 4 teams that I want to take a look at. And we're going to start off with Butterfield and the Heels, which is the team I picked to finish first in the division, and they did in fact do that. They did it by the smallest of margins. It was a 9-5 tie between he and, of course, Patrick and his Swagger team. He won it by some type of tiebreaker. I don't remember what it came down to, but he was a division winner, just as I predicted there. Swagger, very close. I did pick him to finish second, if I recall correctly, and Juice third, with Phrases finishing last. I'm not going to tell you right now and tip my hand like I did for one of the other reviews about who's going to finish where. I'll give that at the end. So let's start out with Butterfield. Some of the things I said about his team last year, I have some little notes here. I mentioned that Tannehill looked like a quarterback who was on his way up. You know, he had a couple years where he was just okay. Wasn't quite living up to where he was drafted, and then he seemed to be turning a little bit of the corner, and I was saying that I thought it was time. I thought he had actually a pretty darn good year last year. And then, of course, this year, it looks like a lot of people are predicting him, including myself, to be really stepping up to that elite level, and that's pretty much where I think he's going to end up finishing. And so that's good news for Butterfield. Other things I said, Chris Johnson and Spiller and Andre Ellington did not impress me as running backs. As a matter of fact, I said specifically that Chris Johnson, I thought, may well have been washed up and was making these crazy predictions about doing 2,000 yards of running or total scrimmage yards, and he did not do that. He, in fact, sort of flamed out. He's back in the league. I'm not really predicting he'll do much of anything again this year. I did like the receivers, Floyd, Crabtree, Woods, and Boykin. You know, I said outside of really actually Floyd that was probably number one. I think I may have spoken up about Crabtree, saying that it looked like he was finally getting his act together and was ready to step up his game. He didn't really quite do that, and of course, San Francisco is not really the place to step up as a wide receiver. I noted Tuck was old, Ninkovich was a star. My other correct call was probably Bowman and Levy producing well from the linebacker spot. A spot that I didn't do so well was Arthur Brown. I said that he had a disappointing rookie year, which he did, and I thought in his second year he had a chance to maybe carve out some space for himself. I just sort of left it at I didn't really know where he was going to be, but I would say my tone was maybe hopeful he would do okay. And of course, he did nothing and may well be ready to leave the league with the way he's played. So we'll see. And heck, I mean, overall, I would say that was probably my worst set of predictions for a team, or at least of the 4 teams out of that division. Let's take a look at the actual team for 2015 for Heels. I'm looking again, as I said, Tannehill's going to come out and do well. Brady, you know, he's a guy that you want to have in your team. He's going to produce points. He's maybe not as fantasy strong as he is real life strong. He seemed to have had a little bit of a down year last year. I think it's going to be similar this year. I mean, I know there's that whole Deflategate stuff, and he's going to come out all revved up, and all the Patriots are going to be revved up, and this is going to motivate him all year. You know, we'll have to see. I think that, again, they continue to have problems. Who are they going to throw to out in New England? I mean, it's going to be difficult. The running back situation out there is a little mixed up, too. Gronkowski is your main weapon for catching. It's going to be interesting. I really don't know if the Patriots are going to be the Patriots that we're used to seeing, and I think that division got a lot stronger. But anyway, fantasy-wise, you've got 2 good quarterbacks to rely on. On the running back side, you held on to Ellington. Ellington is hanging on by a thread for himself to run out in Arizona. He's getting pressure from others. I mean, I think if he stays injury-free, he's actually a pretty good running back. You have Spiller. Spiller's injured. He may or may not make it back for early in the season out in New Orleans, but he's going to have to, or New Orleans, he's going to have to share time with Ingram. And really, he's more receiving back. And when he had a chance last year to really show what he could do, he didn't do that much before he got injured. Devontae Freeman, I don't know, in Atlanta, you've got the rookie Curtis Artis-Payne. He's a maybe. If there's injury out in Indy, he might get some reps in there and he may turn into something. Hard to tell. Cobb has been downgraded. Woodhead, again, a receiving back type of guy. He may or may not have some good games. Can you rely on him? I'm sorry, Cobb is your receiver. I got that wrong. But running back wise, I think we're looking at a very weak spot for this team. On the receiving side, Cobb and Floyd and Witten and Woods and maybe even Dwayne Allen comprise the main 5 players you're going to have during the season to rely on to get points out of that spot. They're okay. Cobb obviously is great. Floyd should step up. Witten has been a rock for a long time. He's getting old. He probably has another good season. And then you get a couple of the guys, Woods and Allen, you're going to have to see what you get out of them. But the offense on this team, outside of the quarterbacks, is a weakness, I would say. Something to be concerned about. Defensively, you got Ninkovich, you got Wilkerson. Those are very solid players, of course, to have. Your DTs, I would say, are weak. Your DEs are solid. I like that. The Beasley pickup was a real nice pickup. He's looked pretty good in preseason. He's playing in a great spot. As long as he stays DE, doesn't get switched over to the linebacker designation, he's a good player for you. He's going to get ample opportunity out in Atlanta, which looks like a real mess on the defensive side like they have for the last couple of years. They need anybody to step up and play well, and he's a guy they're going to let do it as much as possible until he shows he absolutely can't do it. Gilberry, Ninkovich, Wilkerson I already mentioned, so you've got that solid DE. That's a great little group for you to rely on during the season. I like your linebackers, Bowman, Kendricks, Lee. He's 29. He's got a couple seasons left in him. Levy. And then the big question mark will be Cushing. Cushing's had a couple of really great seasons, certainly a couple of unbelievable games early on in his career. And then, the injuries started piling on and the wheels came off his bus a little bit. I have no idea what that guy's going to do out there in Texas. I could say that because their team is going to be so bad offensively, he'll be on the field a ton and that will help him. I can say if he stays healthy, he's a 100-plus guy with some big plays in him too. I can say they've got a lot of good young talent on the defensive side that can be very disruptive, that can just only help him even more to produce well. But as much as I can say those things, I really honestly have no clue what you're going to get from that guy this year. So you're looking at Bowman, Kendricks, and Lee and Levy, 4 linebackers to kind of gel your squad on the defensive side. And they're a good 4. I think you need just a little bit more to solidify that spot, but I like it. Your DEs and your safeties, I don't know that they really impress me that too much. Hedigbo is your only real true safety that you have coming out of that spot, and that's a weakness. But the thing about DBs, I've complained about them for years. I almost hate talking about them. You didn't even hear me mention one player from your team that came out of the DB spot. It's because I tend to feel that they're the biggest gamble out of any spot in the field. You don't know what you're going to get from year to year with a DB. Some have these great seasons, and then they don't follow up the next year. There are very few that are year-to-year stellar producers, and some of them, when they become super good, they're so darn good, nobody would throw to them. So, yeah, they're an elite DB in real life, but they're not in fantasy life. So, my take here on your team on the whole is that you've got a strong squad, and I will let you know where you're going to finish when I get done with the other teams. Let's go over the crazy. So, Frazie's crazies. My prediction last year was that Cutler would be a good quarterback for him. He wasn't a good real-life quarterback for that team out in Chicago, but from a fantasy perspective, he did plenty for you from week to week. Moreno, I thought, would actually continue his way in running back. I thought he'd be still a competitive, strong, hard runner, and that did not happen with him. You had Bolden, Demarius Thomas, and Vernon Davis, who I said that would be sort of a feast or famine type of guy out in San Francisco. He was way more famine than feast, I can tell you that. Demarius Thomas, I said, was a stud, and of course he was. And then Bolden, rock solid, and he was. My real big gaffe on your team was noting I thought that Tim Wright would actually, out of the tight end spot, be a real surprise for you and would do well. I had hopes that he would do well, and he did not do much of anything. You had Dontari Poe, solid defensive tackle, and Deion Jordan. I said it was time for him to step up and show that he earned that first-round draft pick from you and from Miami, and he didn't do that at all. So, and I said your linebackers were a real mess because you had, again, these kind of linebackers. They really converted DEs to linebackers. They had to be, they had to have lots of sacks and big plays to produce for you, and they were hit or miss all season. And, you know, I predicted you wouldn't have a good season. Guess what? 3-11 is not a good season, you know, so no surprise there. Let's take a look at your team this year. Cutler, I think, again, will continue as long as he has the job, because who knows how long he's going to have that job. I think he's an okay fantasy quarterback for you. I was a little surprised looking at your offense. I kind of didn't hate it. I'm not saying I love it. I kind of didn't hate it. Chris Ivory looks like he's going to have a good season for the Jets. You picked up Stacy as a handcuff. I thought that was smart. You've got Winston as a rookie quarterback to develop, which is going to be good. You have Martavius Bryant. You've got a real solid wide receiver there. Although I'm a little concerned about him, just a tiny bit, because I see in him what I see in Torrey Smith. Vertical, up the field player. I don't know that there's much else going on there. But what I like about him versus Flacco, Flacco's got a great big arm, and no doubt he'll let that thing go. I just feel Roethlisberger's a lot trickier about doing that. I think he looks over the field a lot more, and he finds the right guy in the right situation. So we'll see. Janis could have a good season because of the injuries out in Green Bay. He looked like he had a decent preseason. Let's see. Davis is with the new offensive coordinator, so I don't know what you're going to get out of there. Fitzgerald is a rock-solid guy, getting long in the tooth, though. And then Macklin out in KC, I traded him to you. Macklin is the clear wide receiver number 1 out in Kansas City. The problem is, Smith, is he going to throw far enough for Macklin to take advantage of Macklin? I actually think this year they're going to do some of that. I know they like to throw it shorter, and I know Smith doesn't like to gamble. He likes to protect the heck out of that ball. But I think when you have a guy like Macklin who can just simply be so darn wide open at times, how can you not throw it in? How can you just ignore that? I think he's going to have his plays. He certainly has looked okay in preseason in the few reps that he's had. So your offense is okay. I mean, it's not too bad. Your DTs, Aubrey Jones and Dontari and Poe, those are certainly good guys for you. You got a good solid spot filled up there. Your DEs, I wrote SUX. Sucks. I don't know what to say. Deion Jordan has not lived up to what he's supposed to do. He's looking like a bust to me. Maybe Ndamukong Suh being in that area now, maybe this helps the kid get free a lot more. Maybe he gets his head together. Maybe he shows what he can really do. But that's a lot of maybes for me. And so I'm going to say your DEs are just they're not good. It's the Oakland black hole for the crazy crazies there. Linebackers, you got Anthony Barr. You know, he looks like he's going to be good. Von Miller, feast or famine type. You've got, let's see, Allen, Woodyard, DeMarcus Ware, and Julius Peppers, Brian Arakpo, and then Bud Dupree. Already I mentioned in Arakpo, Ware, Peppers, and Von Miller, you've got 4 guys that are really almost like converted DEs, although Miller really is a linebacker. They're really these big play types. So if they're getting sacks, great. Multiple sacks with a few tackles, you're happy. But they may not get enough tackles and enough sacks in a week to help you out all the time. Bud Dupree is a project player. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. I seem to do this on every single video. I'm getting up on my soapbox to say a little something here. I complained about Beckham and the gloves and how they should eliminate that. And I'm going to say this. Pittsburgh gets too much damn credit for some of the people that they draft. Pittsburgh, every time I watch a draft, every time they pick a linebacker or they pick a receiver, somebody invariably says, well, they obviously know what they're doing because all they've done is produced one great receiver after another, one great linebacker after another. I got news for anybody who's paying any damn attention to the people that are drafted out of Pittsburgh or any of these teams. They've had their share of busts. I mean, Pittsburgh, they had let's see, Sean Spence was supposed to be a project player that was going to be somebody really special for them. He flamed out. There's the guy who's going to take over for after Harrison and take over for Timmons. I can't remember his name right now. I think Johnson's the last name. He has not lived up to what he was supposed to be. They have another player I can't remember right now. He flamed out. So sorry I'm on my soapbox without the actual facts to support it. But if you go back and you look at some of those players that they picked, they've had more than their share of misses. So when I heard that Bud Dupree is like the next coming for them, he's going to fit their style of play. He's going to be the guy who's going to fill in, and he's going to get not only the tackles, but he's going to be the big play guy. I don't know what to say except maybe. I know I had a chance to draft him, and I was more than happy to skip over him and look for other fare. So maybe he turns into something for you. I hope so for you. Good luck. We have now in the DBs. I thought your DBs were good. I'm going to mention some names. I said I wasn't going to, but I am here because I like Munnerlyn. I like Arrington and Rogers, Cromartie, and Shields. Arrington, Cromartie, and Shields are all getting up there in age. Shields is 27. The other two are 29. These are tough ages to be running up and down the field, tracking these quick receivers, right on their hip. But you've got 4 really darn good, underrated, or actually recognized corner types who are not so good that they're absolute shutdown corners and will throw to them, and they're certainly fantasy relevant. So that's a nice position to have. Your safeties, you got Hussein and Chancellor, 2 guys I traded you, and Wilcox. So I think you got an okay little group there, enough certainly to carry you week to week. I wouldn't call that a terrible weakness. So on the whole, I kind of like a lot of the things I've seen, and I gotta couch this. I gotta put this into some perspective and say that part of why I like it is I'm going on past history of what I've seen and not liked. So, I'll come back to you and obviously let you know where you're going to finish this year. Juice. All right, let's take a look at Tyler's team. Last year I said about Tyler that he spent a mint to get Schaub, and I understood the rationale for it, but I thought it was a mistake. I thought Schaub was really pretty much done. Guess what? He didn't even play one live down for for Oakland, and he pretty much flamed out with Oakland. He did get, of course, picked up again this year, and he has a chance to start, but I said he was going to be a bust. He was. You have Rodgers. Rodgers is number 1 on the quarterback spot. No doubt about that. Trent Richardson, I said he was looking like a bust at this point, and it was maybe done, and he's over and finished. Well, guess what? I think he's really over and finished. He went through Oakland, and if you can't do anything in Oakland to stick, you're done, because that's pretty much a free pass to play football out there. Ben Tate. Oh, I said Wilson and Jennings. I said that I thought Jennings, who had a great year out in Oakland, benefited from that power blocking scheme that Oakland changed to in the middle of the season, and that he would not, in fact, do well out in Giants territory, that I thought it was a little bit too much hype for him. And I know he was way up on a lot of fantasy boards from experts and magazines and online websites. And I know, I think Cecil picked him in the other league, but maybe by auction, or drafted him somewhat early. I was not a believer because I saw what Oakland did to make him look like a good running back. And the Giants are not the same type of squad for power blocking. So I predicted his demise, and that's exactly what happened. He did not have a great year out there. Ben Tate, I thought, out in Cleveland, I didn't know what we were going to get because it was mixed. That's what you ended up having. Your receivers, they said they were kind of a real mixed bag. You had Streeter always injured, and he got injured again. Wheat needed to step up. He sort of did mid-season. Amendola, injury risk. If he stays in, maybe something. He had a couple of good games. Hilton was your star, and he did well. But on the whole, I didn't really have a lot positive to say about your squad outside of your DBs that I thought were killer. I liked that you had on the linebacker side, you had Kendricks, Freeman, and Burfict. Burfict unfortunately got hurt, and so that really kind of made your season go downhill even more. You ended up finishing last year actually a surprising 9-5, so that was good for you. But we'll have to see. Let's take a look at your team this year. This year, 2015. Well, one of the big questions for you right at the bat is, are you going to manage all season? Because you tend to come and go. Sometimes you're active in the league and you're following every little thing. You're getting your lineups in. You're making blind bids. You're making trades. Sometimes you disappear for a while. That can hurt you in such a competitive league, such as the one we have here. You continue to have Rodgers, really solid there. Your backups, I don't like any of them. Hoyer and Grayson, there's nothing there to help you. So if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, you are done unless you make a trade. On the offensive side, you have Bush and Bo Riddick. Nothing there to talk about. Talafiero out in Baltimore, he had a window of opportunity to show what he could do. It looked like he had a game or two that were decent, and then he just kind of fell back into the second running back position. Didn't seem to take advantage of that. Now they got Javoris Allen out there, plus the actual running back that they have for the team. I don't know what you're going to get there. So I don't like your running backs. That's a real weakness. Your wide receivers, I think you recognize was a weakness for you coming into this season. So you drafted for that specifically. You picked up Perriman. You picked up Sammy Coates and I feel like and Funches. And, you know, of those three, Funches has the best opportunity right now because of the injury out in Carolina. But I got to say, he has not looked good in preseason. He doesn't look like he's ready to step up and be the number one by almost any stretch of the imagination. So that's not a good thing at all. Sammy Coates has been developing very slow, they've said. He certainly is going to be a wide receiver 4 or 5 option out in Pittsburgh. Moncrief, being out in Indianapolis, anyone catching the ball, it's an advantage. But from Andrew Luck. But on the other hand, he's another guy that some people said, he's a real dark horse, a big time sleeper. He could blow up, and he really didn't. He had a couple of games where he was okay, but he didn't show up time to time. But again, that rookie wide receiver spot is very hard. It usually takes about 3 years for most of these guys to get the entire game to slow down for them and really understand it. So maybe here in year 2, he's a little bit better. But I still consider him sort of a wide receiver 4 type, more than a 3, and certainly not a 2. Sanu had a great season for you last year because they had the injury of Marvin Jones. Really nobody to throw to. The tight end wasn't even really helping out too much. And so that was good for you. But Marvin Jones is back, and that's just going to subtract from Sanu. Streeter can be a good receiver. Unfortunately, he's out in Oakland. He's another one who's always getting injured. Who knows? And then Ebron, looked like it could have been a good pick. Tight ends are always good to get. They're a safe bet, especially out there in Detroit, they're looking for a tight end. Well, he did nothing but drop the ball and really not be that impressive. And his blocking was subpar, so that kept him out of a lot of plays. Everyone's saying he's a little better this year. We'll have to see if that's true or not. On the whole, your offense outside of Rodgers and maybe Landry, I'm not really sold on anybody else on this squad, so that's a very tough position to be. 9-5 is not in your future, in my opinion, based on that offense. Let's take a look at the defense. The DTs, you have Logan, you have Williams. To me, those are uninspiring guys. DE, you have Eric Armstead, Frank Clark, Ellis Jones, and Odighizuwa. I don't know if I said that right, but the guy for the Giants that I drafted out in Wiffle 2 and you got here. You picked up 3 rookies to try to help you at the DE spot. You know that's another area of weakness for yourself. Chandler Jones is your top guy by far. Jelly Ellis is not going to do it for you. And the other guys are developmental. Frank Clark, I'm sure you saw the Seattle-Oakland preseason game. He looked like a god on the field. But I don't know. We'll have to see what he does out in Seattle. If he's really that darn good, there's no way he stays out of the lineup. He will be a great player for you. But right now, you don't have a lot going on at DE. Linebacker, perfect. Is he back or not? You have Brown, Collins, Durant Freeman, Jordan Hicks, who's a future kind of guy, Kerrigan, and then T. Smith. It's a pretty good group, I think, on the whole. Not amazing, but it should be good enough to help you out and hold you into games. But they're not what I call they're not going to swing you over necessarily to winning games. Like you're not going to point to your linebackers and go, I won because of them. I think week to week it's going to be more like I didn't lose because of them. DBs, you've got Hayden, Eric Rowe. And then safety Rashad Jones. Rashad Jones is very good. Hayden, I think, will be okay. Hayden is a lockdown type of guy, but he still seems to sort of semi-produce. And Eric Rowe is a rookie. So they're not terrible. On the whole, you tried to address the wide receivers. You tried to address the DEs, which were your 2 big gaping holes going into this season. They're just not ready. Yeah, too many of them are not ready unless you get some real surprises. According to everything everyone's saying, everything we think we know, the players that you've brought on, they're just not ready to take that big step up and help your team become fantasy relevant. So 9-5, not going to happen, but I'll tell you where you're going to finish, in my opinion, in a few minutes. Let's go on to Swagger. So for Patrick, I said that last year, this is last year's review, that he was our returning champ at that point. He needed running backs, so he brought in guys like Denard. He only brought in Denard, actually. He didn't bring in anybody else. Cruz was a stud for him, although unfortunately he got injured. I did say that Cordell Patterson was a stud in the making, and that turned out to be wrong. He's a bit of a head case, and has had poor route running, drop balls, just has not starred like he should have out there. I said Nix, who knows what you're going to get out of him. Maybe he'll be okay, maybe he won't. Well, he wasn't, so no surprise there. And then Kembrell Tompkins, I said I wasn't a believer. I didn't buy him as a great receiver out in New England, which, by the way, there's another team that gets a lot of credit for the people that they pick all the time, and they've had a ton of players that have flamed out, even though everyone has said, well, Belichick knows what he's doing here. When Tompkins was picked, that was a guy that they were raving about, how he could be the deep threat that they've been looking for. He will be, he's this, he's that, along with Dobson. Well, neither of those guys really has become that. So we'll see. I also noted that you had Fairley and Lanford. Those were pretty good DEs. Quinn was good, but you didn't have much else. And Trevathan, Washington, DeQuell Jackson, you had a pretty good little linebacking core going there. And then I noted that you had 10 cornerbacks, 10 on your team at that time, which was a sign that you are reaching for anything you can possibly get. So my feeling is that I called your team pretty well last year. Let's take a look at what we see for this year. This year, you've got Phillip Rivers heading the helm. So good quarterback to have fantasy-wise, and I think a reality too. He's a fiery guy. I like that. He's a player through and through. On your offense, Frank Gore, McCoy, Bolden, Colston. I'm going to stop right there for a second. Great, great names to have on your team. Really productive guys over the years. Really old guys. McCoy's not the oldest of the bunch, but there's some concern, and maybe he's slowing down. So we'll have to see there. Frank Gore, I mean, he's defied the odds. Everyone keeps saying that this year, but who knows? And then Bolden, of course, he's getting long in the tooth, and then Colston is certainly long in the tooth. So you've got some elder statesmen who are proven guys, but any one of them, any 2-3 of them could drop out on you this year, and that could be trouble. Cordell Patterson, we already talked about. Brian Quick, who gives a shit? Pardon me, who cares? Well, Wheaton, he could be a little bit of a sleeper this year. He may come on and do something out there in Pittsburgh, especially if there's any injury along the wide receiving front. Then he really catches on. I like him. I think he'll be good. Owen Daniels, Eifert, Gronk, of course, is a megastar, as long as he doesn't get hurt. Rudolph, and then Alan Hearns could be a little bit of a sleeper. He showed a little bit last year what he could do and then completely disappeared. Partly his fault, partly Bortles' fault in that line out in Jacksonville. But he's got sleeper written all over him. We'll have to see. Eifert could rebound. Owen Daniels can produce from here to some weeks. And then Rudolph, out in Minnesota, he's going to find some weeks. I don't think he's going to find a lot of weeks so that he's great. So when I look at your overall offense, you have more good than bad, but you could implode. You could have some problems there, but I don't know that you're gonna, but it could happen. Let's see. Linval and Ngata and Fairley, as well as Hill, they make up your DTs. I think it's a so-so group. Outside of Linval, I'm not wowed by them. Fairley is really not done what he was expected to do. He came on his rookie year next to Sue, and he looked like he was going to be incredible, and he wasn't. The DEs, you got Bryant, you have Mincy, Coney Ely, Cedric Thornton, and then D. Hunter for your rookie. This is not a very strong group outside of Bryant out in Cleveland. Coney Ely probably takes a step up this year and starts producing sacks. I think that will happen, but you don't have much depth here at all. Dansby, Hawthorne, DeQuell Jackson, Aaron Lynch, Keenan Robinson, Trevathan, and Washington make up your linebacking crew. They're very solid. However, Dansby's old, 33. Hawthorne's 30, DeQuell Jackson's 31. You know, I'm not predicting that they're going to get all hurt and injured or whatever, but you can start to see just a small tapering off of what they've been producing year to year. So that doesn't help, because last year you only scored, I think, about 380 points, which is kind of middle of the pack, if I'm remembering off the top of my head. And you definitely need more than that. Aaron Lynch, I think that's a speculative pick because of all this stuff going on in San Francisco. I don't think he fits that scheme out there. I don't think he's much help for you, but we'll have to see. The other guys can carry you. You've got at least 5 or 6 good linebackers out there. It should be enough to help you. I like your DBs. They're solid. Hall, Hayward, Maxwell, McCourty, and Kerry Williams. Very solid group of DEs. So that's a real strength for you. That's a good thing to have. You got 2 studs on the safety side. Harrison, Parka, Iloka, I don't know. Okay, I guess, out in Cincy. I think you have Shamarko Thomas. Okay, and then Vereen out in Chicago, holding on by a thread to the safety position. He may or may not be the answer. So, there's everybody now out of that division. I took a little bit longer than usual. Let's get to how it all finalizes. All right. I am going to go with Crazies taking the bottom. You didn't think I was going to say the top, did you? No. Crazies takes the bottom. I'm predicting about a 4-10 team, which is one better than he did last year. Maybe he surprises and he wins 5. We'll see. I've got Juice and Heels in a deadlock of 8-6, taking the runner-up or second, third spot, which of course means Swagger is going to take the top, and I think it's going to be a 9-5 season to take the top. But with all that said, I'm going to do what anyone who predicts stocks does. I'm going to tell you buy this stock, but you know what? You could get screwed buying it. So I'm going to kind of do the same here. Just because you've got 3 teams that not one of them has separated themselves too far from the other, I'm going partly by ownership here. And I'm going to say Swagger is paying attention every week. Patrick wants his team to win like there's no tomorrow. So he's involved in deals and blind bidding and everything he can to get his lineup just right. I think Butterfield, Johnny, I think you're pretty much there, but I think there are times when you're not on and you're letting your team sort of self-pilot itself, and that's costing you some stuff. And then Ty, I did say that you're in and out. I know you've tried to be better about that, but I just think the way your schedule is and you're constantly from one place to another, that it makes it very difficult for you. So even if you want to, you can't. So with one person managing his team as much as humanly possible, he coaches them up to that level of taking it all. I think the team is a little bit better, but not a ton better than the other 2 I've just mentioned. So again, injuries, trades, pickups, those all make a big difference too. So we'll have to see what happens there. But I think I got this one right. And there you go. Next 2 divisions, give me a couple of days, boys.